All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the presentation. Thank you so much for being here. Howdy. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Hey, guys, it is Friday. It's Friday. I am here. You are here. Let us have a great time tonight. Tonight. Yeah, so hey, hopefully you're having a good Friday. Wherever you are, you're going to have a fantastic weekend. And yeah, allergies are cray-cray. So it's just bad here in Kentucky because of allergy season. You know, it's just one of those things. Now, look, here's the deal. Trolls, excuse me. I won't pay attention to your hateful comments because it actually shows more of a projection of who you are as a person to go around making hateful comments. I don't do that to you, and it's a shame that you guys would choose to do that to us. But nonetheless, that just, again, shows the type of individual that you are, because a person who truly has Christ in the heart, they don't troll other human beings. Just a little bit of a heads up on that. But if you guys can't behave, then I'll just put sub chat on for the entire time. I don't care. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. We're just not going to allow disrespect in this platform. Not going to happen. Okay, so that's your one and only warning. Otherwise, I put sub chat on and we're done. That's it. Okay, everybody. Hello, welcome. I appreciate you being here. Well, thank you very much, JMB. That's a beautiful gift. Thank you. Okay, everyone. I'm Bishop Long, and happy Sunday. This Sunday, happy Friday to you. Truly, I tell you what. It's a jam-packed. We've got a lot of things to talk about. But first, well, thank you very much, Donna. Thank you. Oh, Donna, I think I got your gift. So we'll talk about that in a moment. I thought it was from you. I didn't get a note or anything. And I'll show everybody in just a second. But first, this is what I need Mr. Producer to do. Roll that footage.
Fans of Bishop James Long, the renowned exorcist and paranormal expert on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Now you can carry his wisdom with you. Our Bishop James Long collection features blessed apparel such as St. Benedict hats and tees, as well as home items to protect and inspire. Elevate your spiritual journey. Go to kgradb.com/shop and discover the Bishop James Long merch today.
Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Please do me a favor if you would. I'll get your question. We don't worship Mary. We ask Mary to pray for us. That's very, very important. If you actually pray to Mary as you would God, that's blasphemy. We don't do that. The Catechism is quite clear about that. We ask Mary to pray for us just as much as you ask me to pray for you. That's it. I want everyone, please go to the sponsor's website, KGRAD as in dog, B as in bicycle.com. KGRADB.com. Click on the shop link and you will see my name. Now, look, here's what we have some amazing products up there. Mr. Producer just showed the video. They are really nice products. Thank you there, Starla. Now, here's what's so neat about this. 100% of the profit that I would make from KGRADB radio selling on this platform, on the link there, 100% is going to our friends, the MKS Kids Foundation. They're an orphanage in Uganda that we are partnering with, and we are helping, and we are making a real difference in these children's lives. And I love that. So what I need you to do, again, go to KGRAD as in dog, B as in bicycle.com. Click on the shop link and then my name. And they have, so again, St. Michael, St. Benedict, who's the patron saint for exorcists as well as police officers. And they have some brand new items there. Purchase them. Christmas is right around the corner. And know that when you're purchasing, you're also helping the MKS Kids Foundation. Now, if you want to go to my website, you can, bishopjameslong.com. I want to share something with everyone. I have a brand new book out. It is brand new. And here's what's really exciting about this. Here's the book. It is Bishop Long's Paranormal Investigating Trainer Manual. Thank you very much, Jessica. So Bishop Long's Paranormal Investigator Training Manual. It's about 260-something pages. And it's a lot of information. Oh, wonderful. You got yours today. Great. It's what I need you to do. Go to my website, bishopjameslong.com, scroll down, and you will see this book right here. I want you to buy as many of these books as you can. 100% of the profits. So, Mr., we're going to shut down the trolls right now. Not that they care. But 100% of the profits that goes to selling my book, I own it. I have every right to make money off my book because it's my work. But as a community, 100% of the profits is going to the MKS Kids Foundation. I'm working on that right now, Alex. I got to figure some things out. But right now, that's the only place that you can get it. Just click on that. I love that. So, matter of fact, the MKS Kids Foundation, they sent me all their information on how to send the money to them. So it's going directly to them. 100%. So folks, just please understand that when you purchase this book, number one, it's a lot of work. I think it's a good book. But 100% of the profits is going to this orphanage. I think that's beautiful. Well, it's a paranormal investigator's training manual. And all you got to do is go to my website, bishopjameslong.com. That's it, bishopjameslong, LONG.com. It's right there. You'll just scroll down, you'll see it. And it's about over 260 pages. And again, 100% of that, 100% of all profits goes to the MKS Kids Foundation. I think it's beautiful. By the way, you can also go to bishopjameslong.com and click on the books link. I think it's books. Let me double check. Hold on one second, Mr. Producer. It is, because I just fixed that the other day because people were asking me, do I have a, yes. So bishopjameslong.com and click on the books link. If you scroll down, they're all there. I have Bishop Long's paranormal training manual. 100% of the profits tells you goes to the kids in Uganda. I have a clergy handbook of prayers, spiritual blessings, my mom's cookbook, Prepared with Love. Also, Jason McLeod's Dark Siege books, which are phenomenal. He actually was trained by the Warrens. And Willie Windwalker Gibson books. And, of course, my dear friend, keep Andrea Perrin in your prayers, your thoughts and prayers as she's battling cancer. Andrea Perrin, and there's House of Darkness, House of Light. It is the true story of the Conjuring House. She grew up in the Conjuring House, so she will know. Really, it's a trilogy. They're great books. And so it's all there for you guys. All you got to do, it's very simple. I can't make it any, bishopjameslong.com. Just go to my website and click on the books link. There you are. So, wonderful. Yeah, my mom was a great cook. But anyway, I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. The paranormal training manual, again, 100% of that goes to the MKS Kids Foundation. Also, I have written a book on demonology that is finished. Judy Ann is a professional editor, and she is editing that now. And I've also completed a book on the Book of Revelation. Grace, I will. Send me the book to the face. Send me that URL, if you would. So, yeah. Oh, for misleading people into sin. Oh, you mean giving my work for free to kids in Uganda who have nothing to eat. What are you doing for Christ? That's right. You're going around judging people. That's all you got. That's all you trolls offer. Do you work hard for the devil? You realize that, don't you? For those of you who are trolling, you're working for the devil. I'm trying to be kind by leaving the chat open for everyone, but you just can't help yourself from being nasty and hateful. Anyway, if you want to go to the church's website, that's usocc.org. And tonight we pray for people instead of judge and condemn. So for those of you who like to judge and condemn, you might not want to show up because your heads might spin. But if you want to change your ways, why don't you join us in praying for people instead of judging? Because that's what we do. We pray for one another and we lift people's spirits, not judge them. So, again, just, oh goodness, in the hospital. Hope you're okay. Yeah. Okay. So there we go, everybody. That's all the, that's information. Well, Jason, it's the same thing as far as we don't pray to saints. You ask the saints to, in 2 Maccabees, by the way, in scripture, it speaks of this, but we ask the saints to pray for us just as much as Mary. We don't pray to Mary. We ask Mary to pray for us. So I think people, just like you ask people to pray for you, yeah, it's intercession. You ask people to pray for you. We ask Mary and the angels above in heaven to pray for us. Okay, so for those, sure, no problem. So for those of you so wrong, okay, I would agree with you if you're right. You really should sue your brains for non-support. All right. Anyway, okay. You guys just can't stop, can you? You're so full of hate. There you go. That's it. See you, trolls. Sub chat is on. All right. You're not going to ruin our Friday nights. No matter how evil you are, you failed. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. All right. So tonight we're going to have a very, very cool show. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you are as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely there, Mr. Producer. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll have to, I'll have to order that. And the problem is a lot of people are asking me, and I appreciate that. They're asking me, if I could sign it. If you buy the book, you can send it to me. The only thing that I ask, and I'll sign it if you want me to, but the only thing that I ask is that you have to pay the shipping to get back to you. Because if I have 100 books sent to me, I can't pay for shipping for all these books because I'm not getting any money off of it at all. I'm donating 100% of it to the MKS Kids Foundation. So I just ask that you pay for the shipping. That's it. You got to do that. All right. Tonight we're going to talk about a topic that should be, it's startling. And I want to remind you that tomorrow I will be in Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky, where I'll be giving a presentation on demonology and possession, and looking forward to that. Yeah, I know, Paula. You're watching here, too many trolls on TikTok. That's why we stopped it. That's why I put sub chat on, because the trolls are so demonically oppressed. We're done with them. I try to be nice, and I try to be kind, and I try to extend grace. And then people are just so abusive. They're just so abusive, the trolls. So we put sub chat on, and that'll be on for the rest of the night. Yeah, you can go to bishopjameslong.com, scroll down, and you'll see the ministry's P.O. box. Okay, let's get into it. Most of us have heard about the witch trials. And the things that occurred during these witch trials were unethical, barbaric, demonic, which were primarily led by trolls. And I just find it alarming because, my friends, one thing that I want to share with you is that, they have no shame, is it didn't just happen in Salem. And that's what's so frightening about this. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give a presentation on other tragedies, other locations that you may have never heard about. And then we're going to go into this Salem witch trials. I'm also going to talk about the things that they did to determine whether or not you were a witch. Most of us, if we were there and being accused, most of us would have been found guilty. So let's go into this presentation. For those of you who are new, here's what we do. The first hour or so, I do a lecture, as I always do. I always present something to you. And then this second hour, we just have a conversation, share some articles that I found online, and answer some of your questions. All right, I want to talk about the North Berwick witch trials. This happened in the 1590s in Scotland. So King James VI instigated alleged witches after storms and shipwrecks blamed on them. It led to confessions under torture and being unalived. There was public fear, influence of a monarch's paranoia, the use of torture to extract confessions that weren't true. So tonight, this first historical event, we're going to explore one of the most chilling episodes in Scottish history, the North Berwick witch trials. Over the next, I don't know, however minutes here, we'll cover the terrifying events, the sinister accusations, the lingering shadows that still haunt North Berwick even to this day. So here's the deal. It was in the late 16th century. For those trolls, that means around 1590s. A time when fear, superstition, political intrigue, it blurred the lines between reality and nightmare. See, Scotland was a land that was ripe with suspicion, where whispers of witchcraft would condemn a person to death without concrete evidence. So in 1590, North Berwick, a small coastal town on the eastern coast of Scotland, found itself at the heart of a terrifying witch panic. Rumors of witches conspiring with the devil, casting curses, summoning storms, it spread like wildfire. Imagine a community gripped with paranoia. I mean, families were torn apart, neighbors accusing neighbors, all under the shadow of an unseen malevolent force. So that's the backdrop of this first story. So the crisis began with a series of strange events: storms at sea damaging ships, crop failures, illnesses spreading with no explanation. Many believe that these disasters were the work of witches. And one of the first to be accused was a woman named Barbara Napier. She was a local healer known for her herbal remedies. And what's so sad is people went to her often when they had certain ailments. But in a time when such knowledge was suspect, her reputation made her vulnerable. And accusations soon snowballed. This is a woman who used natural remedies to heal people. So the key figure behind the accusations was King James VI of Scotland. A king was obsessed with witchcraft. He believed that witches were part of a conspiracy to overthrow him. And he was determined to root out all of this evil. So in 1590, James traveled to North Berwick to investigate rumors of witches who had supposedly tried to harm him during his voyage to Denmark. And according to legend, a group of women, including Agnes Sampson and Gilly Balfour, were accused of conspiring with the devil to cast storms and sink the king's ship. Now, these women, they were subjected to brutal interrogations, torture to extract confessions that weren't real. And under pressure, they admitted to forming a witch's coven, flying through the night, consorting with demons, because they were told, if you just confess, then, we won't unalive you. But if you continue to lie, we're going to continue to torture you until you are unalived. I have to say unalived because of TikTok rules. So one notorious confession came from Agnes Sampson. She was an elderly woman. She was a healer who claimed that she had met with the devil himself, an impish creature with horns and cloven hooves, whispering dark secrets. It sounds very much like trolls. Well, anyway, the methods used to extract confessions, they were brutal. By the way, I went in Los Angeles. I went to the Medieval Torture Museum. Thank you, Michelle. I was going to do a documentary on it, but I can't because it was so brutal and so gruesome that I would be banned. So I did see a lot of methods that they used in torturing these people, and some of them, I'll wait till you hear later on. The infamous pricking and stretching devices, the water tests, all designed to force suspects to confess and implicate others. And we'll go into that later. One woman, Gilly Balfour, she was reportedly pressed with heavy weights until she broke and named other people. Many accused witches confessed to impossible acts, flying on broomsticks, attending sabbats in the moonlight, and worshiping Satan. These confessions, though false, coerced, fueled the hysteria. So the community's fear grew as more women and men were arrested. They were interrogated and condemned. In total, dozens of alleged witches were tried. Some were unalived by hanging. Others were burned at the stake. So the trials culminated in a series of public unalivings. The most famous victim was Agnes Sampson, whose fate shocked the nation. She was hanged in 1591, and her death, was a stark warning to others. King James, himself present, was deeply involved. His obsession with witchcraft, it fueled the frenzy. He even authored a book called Demonology, which laid out his beliefs about witches and demons, which obviously further stroked the flames of the paranoia. But the chaos didn't end overnight. Many innocent people lost their lives, their guilt manufactured by fear, the brutal methods of interrogation. The North Berwick witch trials left a dark legacy. It's estimated, get this, that around 70 people were accused and dozens were unalived. And the hysteria eventually subsided, but the scars remained. So more than 4 centuries later, North Berwick still whispers with the echoes of those dark days. Some locals believe that the spirits of the accused linger, their tragic stories haunting the coast. And historians now see this episode as a cautionary tale, how fear can turn communities against themselves. Because the North Berwick witch trials remind us of a time when darkness overshadowed reason. Innocent lives were sacrificed to fear. That is a stark chapter in the history of witch hunts. It's a reminder of the terrible cost of hysteria. Now, the next story, which is insane, is the shadows over Trier. It's the dark secrets of the witch trials, the Holy Roman Empire, 1590 to 1591. So in the early 17th century, at the time of chaos, upheaval across Europe, the Holy Roman Empire, a patchwork of states, it was gripped with religious conflicts, political instability, superstitions rooted deeply in fear. So in the city of Trier, in what is now West Germany, the atmosphere is thick with suspicion. So the city's authorities are obsessed with rooting out devil worshippers, witches, believing that these evil forces, they threaten the very fabric of society. Well, between 1581 and 1631, think of that. The city streets echoed with screams, confessions, ominous crackle of burning. Well, you get the point. 50 years of this. And this is the story of those dark years, the Trier witch trials. So the catalyst is a series of tragic events, sudden deaths, illnesses, unexplained calamities that struck Trier's population. Rumors spread like wildfire. Witches were at work, casting curses, summoning demons. One of the earliest victims was a woman named Anna Maria. She was a respected midwife. Her arrest in 1627 sent shockwaves through the community. Authorities believe that she was in league with the devil, practicing black magic that caused the city's misfortune. So the inquisitors, eager to demonstrate their power, it launched relentless investigations. They relied on forced confessions, brutal tortures, spectral evidence, claims based on visions and dreams that accuse innocent people of vile deeds. So just because you may have had a nightmare of someone in the village was conspiring with the devil, and that's all it took. So as accusations grew, so did panic. The city's court became a chamber of horrors where fear ruled, justice took a back seat. So in Trier, torture was not only used, it was routine. The accused faced devices like the rack, where victims were stretched painfully. I did see this one at the Medieval Torture Museum, the Strappado, where they dangled from their arms, dislocating shoulders. One notorious method was the water torture. And we'll go back and again, I'll talk about that in a moment. Many, broken by pain, admitted to heinous acts that they knew that they were false. Women, children, even men, no one was safe from the inquisitors' brutality. Some confessed, again, flying on broomsticks, attending satanic Sabbaths in remote forests, sacrificing even infants, then cursed rituals. The confessions, they were often vivid, describing even orgies with demons, blood sacrifices, pacts sealed with blood and fire. These stories, though fabricated, it fueled the hysteria because they thought that perhaps maybe if they would just lie and just tell them what they wanted to hear, then they would be spared. Not so. The core belief driving the trials was that the witches and the devil worshippers engaged in secret, nocturnal rites, Sabbaths filled with dancing, singing, devil worship. Many accused women, like Mary Butner, spoke of demonic familiars, cats, dogs, even invisible spirits who served as messengers and assistants in the dark deeds. So confessions described grotesque rituals. People were unalived and sacrificed, bloods on altars, the devil himself appearing in visions. And the idea that ordinary townspeople could be corrupted by evil and consort with demons, it created a real climate of paranoia. Everyone feared that neighbor, their family, even their own reflection. So by the 1620s, the unalivings had become daily spectacles. The city's main square, it actually was transformed into a grim stage where people would show up, and gallows and for those prepared for the condemned. In this particular place, victims as young as 10 years old were unalived. Their screams echoing through the city streets. Many refused to confess, maintaining their innocence, even after the bodies were broken. And one of the most tragic victims, as I mentioned, was Anna Maria, who, despite her innocence, she was tortured into confession and later unalived because she thought by confessing that her life would be spared. And the trials continued around 1631, claiming hundreds of lives, families torn apart. The Trier witch trials are a stark reminder of how fear can distort justice and destroy lives, about how people can use Christianity as a hate tool. For those of you who continue to do this, shame on you. Innocent people accused, tortured, unalived. And historians see this episode as a tragic example of mass hysteria, how superstition, abuse of power, fear can turn communities into battlegrounds. Now, as if that wasn't enough, the witch trials, the shadows over Pendle, the witch trials of 1612 in England, all these are true stories, and this is what makes them even more frightening. And we'll get to the Salem witch trials in a moment. All right. Right. Many, Paula. That's right. Yeah, Paula says the Pendle witch trials took the many people were unalived. So here's the situation. 1612. In the remote hills of Lancashire, England, a small community, Pendle Forest, superstition, fear, it ran deep. So the villagers, they lived simple, often harsh lives, haunted by, poverty, disease, bad harvest. So amid this backdrop, rumors of witchcraft began to swirl. Accusations are whispered. Neighbors suspect neighbors. Suspicion grows like wildfire. And in this small, isolated community, fear grabs. Innocent women and men find themselves caught in a web of accusations. They were tortured. They were unalived. This is one of the most notorious witch hunts in English history. Here's what happened. The spark was a series of actually troubling events. So livestock dying mysteriously, crops fail, children falling ill. So the local magistrate, Sir Edward Bromley, was eager to prove his authority and rid Pendle of evil. So in March of 1612, a woman named Old Dimdy, whose real name was Elizabeth Southerns, it's a notorious healer. She was a midwife, again, using natural remedies to heal. And she was respected as a midwife. She was accused of witchcraft. Her daughter, Millie, and others in her circle, including Miss Device, became embroiled in suspicion. Allison, she was a young woman. She was accused of cursing a local peddler, John Law, who became ill shortly after this encounter. And under pressure, Allison and others confessed to attending satanic gatherings, flying their brooms at night, casting spells. And they were told, if you just confess and give your life over to Christ, your life will be spared. So after torture, they said, okay, fine, yes, we did it. And then they say, we knew it, and now you're going to be unalived. They lied. The accusation snowballed. Neighbors denounced neighbors. Fear turned into a frenzy. The entire community, desperate to find a scapegoat, obviously, turned to suspicion and the brutal machinery of justice. So in Pendle, torture was the key to extracting confessions. Suspects faced devices like the pricking needle, used to find the witch mark, a supposed devil's mark to the proof of guilt. One of the most infamous victims, as I mentioned, was Allison. But she was older, but despite her age and frailty, she was subjected to relentless attacks. Her body was examined for marks that would condemn her, any mark she had. So Allison, who initially denied her guilt, was subjected to the water test, submerged into water to see if she would sink. And under torture, she confessed to flying, attending Sabbaths, cursing her victims. Many others, by the way, pressed by pain and fear, confessed to bizarre and horrifying acts, flying on broomsticks. And anyway, confessions, often false, were used as evidence in the court. And the line between truth and hysteria blurred. Innocent people were condemned on flimsy, coerced claims. This is the power that people have when you abuse Christianity, when you abuse faith. And by the way, a key part of the trial was the search for the witch's mark. I mentioned that it was an alleged satanic sign, a scar, a mole. If you had a mole, you were done. The accused were examined, sometimes tortured to find these marks, which were believed to be the devil's fingerprint. Many victims were accused of spectral evidence, visions, dreams in which demons appear to testify against them. Witnesses claim to have seen the accused flying on the broom, attending Sabbaths with Satan. One notable case, again, Allison Device. Allison's mother, who was accused of riding through the night with the devil on a broom. Her confession was coerced. Her fate is sealed. So the community believed that witches had made pacts with Satan and that these evil deeds threatened their very souls. So, yeah, in 1612, the court convicted 11 people of witchcraft. They faced grim unalivings. Most were hanged and some passed away in prison. The most famous unaliving was Allison Device, whose young age and coerced confessions shocked many. Her death symbolized a tragic injustice. The hysteria eventually subsided, but not before dozens of lives were shattered, families torn apart, reputations destroyed, innocent people condemned to death. The Pendle witch trials are remembered as one of England's darkest episodes, an example of how far ignorance and cruelty can lead to tragedy. The story, I think, of Pendle reminds us that hysteria can turn communities against themselves, with innocent lives paying the ultimate price. It does. It teaches us a vital lesson. Trust in justice, compassion, and reason must always prevail over fear and superstition. Because when society succumbs to hysteria, innocence becomes the collateral damage. The next case, as if those aren't enough, the Burlington and Stamford witch trials in 1612. And this is the thing, most of us have always heard about the Salem witch trials, but when you hear of all these other witch trials, you think, what in the world? So it was the early 17th century. It was a time of political upheaval, religious strife, superstitions across England. Small towns, villages trembled under the weight of fear of witches, devil worshippers, unseen evil forces. So in the counties of Buckinghamshire and Lincolnshire, whispers of witchcraft grew louder because the towns of Burlington and Stamford became embroiled in accusations that would lead to horrific trials, brutal interrogations, unalivings. Again, this was a quiet village suddenly turned into a battlefield where neighbors turned against neighbors. Innocent lives were sacrificed to superstitions. So what happened here? How did this start? Well, the spark was often, and it's a shame, but the spark was often an unexplained death, a bad harvest, a mysterious illness. So in 1612, in the village of Burlington, a series of strange events began to unfold. So again, livestock died, unexplained, no one can explain, crops failed, whispers began of curses. And one woman, her name was Elizabeth Clark. She was accused of witchcraft after her livestock was found slaughtered. And she was seen speaking to what villagers claimed were familiar spirits. And her arrest sparked a frenzy. So in nearby Stamford, similar accusations arose. With the backdrop of the English Civil Wars and societal upheaval, paranoia intensified. So authorities, eager to get control of the situation, relied on confessions. How? Through brutal torture. So the climate of suspicion spread like wildfire. Families accused, neighbors denounced each other. Fear ruled the land. Now, in these trials, torture was standard. Suspects faced devices, again, like pricking needles we talked about, finding witches' marks. One victim, her name was Mary Brown, a woman from Stamford. She was subjected to relentless interrogation. So under pressure, and she just couldn't take it anymore, she confessed to flying on a broomstick. Again, attending satanic Sabbaths, cursing her neighbors, confessions that she later recanted, but her pleas fell on deaf ear. The authorities believed confessions were proof of guilt, regardless of the truth. Children, women, elderly men endured these tortures, their screams echoing through the dark interrogation chambers. Some victims broken physically and mentally, signed false confessions, confessions that sealed their fate, even though, again, they were told, confess and give your life to Christ, and your life will be spared. That was a lie. Again, they always look for a witch mark, a mole, a scar, a blemish. That was enough satanic proof of guilt. So many claim to have seen familiars, like animals, like cats or dogs, that witches supposedly used to carry out the dark deeds. There was one person that was accused that had a dog, and she was petting the dog and loving the dog, and then the dog went over to a neighbor, and the neighbor somehow died, and that dog was cursed. The dog was unalived, and so was the woman. Others spoke of spectral evidence, visions of the devil, demons appearing in dreams. One of the accused, her name is Sarah Johnson, claims she attended a Sabbath in the woods where she danced with demons in a circle of fire, and her confessions coerced fuel the hysteria even further. And the community grew more convinced that evil was lurking among them, hidden behind innocent faces. I appreciate the chat, guys. I'm not looking at the chat rooms right now because I'm obviously focusing on the lecture. But feel free to chat, and if you guys have any thoughts on this. By the early 1620s, executions began. Victims were unalived, burned. Terrible things I can't mention. One of the most, I think, all of them are tragic, but one tragic story was Elizabeth Clark, whose accusations sparked the initial hysteria. Despite her pleas of innocence, she was condemned. She was unalived. Didn't matter what she said. And by the way, these executions, they weren't isolated, these executions. Dozens of innocent men and women accused of devilry met their end in a wave of hysteria that swept through the region. Many families torn apart. And now the hysteria gradually subsided, but not before claiming dozens of lives. And the Burlington and Stamford witch trials remain a haunting reminder of how fear can distort justice. The next crazy story, again, the Wurzburg witch trials. The Wurzburg witch trials, 1626 through 1631, Holy Roman Empire. The Wurzburg. So for those of you who don't know this is saying, well, thank you very much, Lily, thank you. This was a city, a story of madness and torture. It was in Germany in the 17th century. So it's the year 1626. The Holy Roman Empire, a land of shifting allegiances and religious upheaval, is gripped by fear. In the Prince Bishopric of Wurzburg, a city nestled among rolling, Bavarian hills, beautiful little place, paranoia begins brewing, fueled by war, religious conflict, superstition. So in the tense atmosphere, accusations of witchcraft explode like wildfire. What begins as whispers of evil turned into a deafening roar of hysteria. Innocent people, again, men, women, even children, they're dragged into this nightmare. Imagine this. It was cobblestone streets, just a nice, beautiful area, turns into echoing with cries of the accused, the chilling clang of chains, the unseen shadow of death looming over all of them. So here's what happened. The spark that ignited the trials, it was, again, a series of mysterious events. We're getting an idea of how this starts, don't we? Sudden illnesses among townsfolk, inexplicable deaths, strange visions, rumors of evil spirits, cursed spells spread like wildfire. So in 1626, a young woman named Maria Schaefer, accused of witchcraft. Her arrest set off a chain reaction. More accusations, more arrest. So the prince bishop at that time, Johann Philipp von Schönborn, it's a man obsessed with rooting out heresy, and he saw witches everywhere. In his mind, it was his goal, this extremist. So his court, eager to cleanse the city, empowered a commission of judges and inquisitors. He was a bishop. Thank you very much, Corrine. Thank you. And they relied on old, brutal methods. Again, we'll talk about those in a moment. But what truly terrified the entire population was the confessions, or were the confessions. Confessions that painted vivid pictures of nightmarish gatherings, demonic pacts, ritual orgies. So in Würzburg, torture was routine. The accused were subjected to terrible torture. Now, one woman, Katharina Stalker, was pressed with heavy weights, her scream echoing through the cold stone chambers. Under such agony, many people confessed to horrendous acts, flying on broomsticks, sacrificing children, attending devil-worshipping gatherings. The confessions, often false, were believed to be proof of guilt, and the judges, blinded by fear and ignorance and superstition and extremism in their faith, sentenced dozens to death. Some victims, they were strangled, others burnt alive, their bodies left as grim warnings to others. And by the way, the trials stretched on for years. And the core of the hysteria was belief in the Sabbaths. It's nightly gatherings where allegedly witches supposedly met with demons, danced in forbidden circles, plotted against the church and state. Yep, it was the church, the Roman church, that participated in this nonsense. Many accused women, like Maria Morlin, and a lot of people don't like this, but this I'm not going to hide. This is the truth. And Anna Snatcherin spoke of demonic familiars. Again, what are cats, dogs, supernatural beings who serve them and carry out their dark bidding? Confessions that were coerced and forced, children unalived in sacred rites, blood spilled to invoke dark powers, witches packed with the devil. Oh, thank you, Corrine. The idea that ordinary townspeople could be a part of such evil conspiracy, it fueled the fear. So by the late 1620s, the executions reached a fever pitch. The city square turned into a macabre theater. People would show up, mass people, just showing up and watching it, getting ready for this witch to be unalived. It was entertainment hour for them. And primarily, many people would show up and yell, get her, because they were so afraid they were going to be accused too. Victims, some as young as 10, were unalived. Now, one person, her name was Maria Morlin. She refused to confess. So they literally broke her body. And her silent defiance haunted the city long after her death. So the trials finally subsided around 1631, but not before claiming hundreds of lives. The Würzburg witch trials are a stark reminder how fear and religious extremism can turn communities into monsters. The next one is the Torsaker witch trial, 1675, Sweden. This is terrible. When you start digging more and more and you find out there were so many witch trials, like what the heck? So the Torsaker witch trial, 17th century Sweden, in Sweden. So here's the year, 1675, in the remote village of Torsaker, located in the northern reaches of Sweden. It's a land of snow and silence, beauty, where superstitions run deep, and the church's influence looms large. You don't question the church. At that time, you never did. The villagers lived simple, hard lives, farming, fishing, enduring brutal Scandinavian winters. But beneath this quiet veneer, dark fears began to simmer. Rumors of witchcraft, of the devil's influence, spread like wildfire. What happened? Well, a young girl, she fell ill and she passed away suddenly. Suspicion ignites a frenzy of accusations. And in this bleak landscape, hysteria takes hold. And what follows is one of the largest, most brutal witch trials in Swedish history. So the death of a young girl, her name was Ellen. In 1675, her parents, desperate, very superstitious, claimed that she had been bewitched. And soon more children and adults began to fall ill and die mysteriously. The local priest, Lars Paulinus, and the authorities were eager to root out what they believed was Satan's work among them. So they summoned villagers for interrogation. Accusations spread like wildfire. Yeah, a local priest participated. He led it. Neighbors pointed fingers at the most vulnerable, women and elderly. Those with odd reputation. And the fear was palpable. Everyone believed that the devil was lurking in their midst, seeking to corrupt their souls. So the hunt for witches began in earnest. So in Torsacre, torture was unaccepted method. Was a completely accepted method, an integral part of the justice. So suspects face brutal devices, methods designed to break their spirits. They had a water test, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Many victims, exhausted, battered, confessed to attending satanic Sabbaths, flying on broomsticks. There we go again, unaliving children. And among those pressed into confessing was a woman named Marta. She was an elderly woman. She maintained her innocence until the end. Despite protests, she was condemned. Her plea for mercy completely ignored. The court condemned dozens, men, women, children, witches. So by the summer of 1675, the unalivings began. The village square was transformed again into a grim theater of death. People showed up to watch these horrible, barbaric acts of people being unalived. It was an act of terror meant to purge evil, allegedly, but also to terrify others. Marta, for those of you who don't know, Marta, she was young. Her stoic silence haunting the witnesses, her death epitomized the cruelty inflicted upon innocent people. 71 people were unalived. Entire families were wiped out, their lives destroyed. The Torsacre witch trials left a scar in Swedish history, a stark reminder of how fear and ignorance and extremism can lead to terrible things. Now, the violence was unprecedented in Sweden. But here's the final tally, if you want to know. It is estimated that over 300 people were accused in this small town. 71 were unalived. Now let's go into what many people know about the Salem witch trials. And in a moment, we're going to talk also about, would you have been unalived? Some of you are going to be quite shocked when you hear some of this stuff, because when I talk a little bit about the torture, well, let's go into the torture. Let's go ahead and let me explain what the torturing, what they did. So first, it was called the rack. That was a device that stretched the victim's body by attaching their wrists and ankles to rollers and turning a crank. It caused intense pain and many times dislocation of joints. It was barbaric. I've been talking about pricking or pens. So accused individuals were often subjected to pricking with needles or pens to find the spot where they were supposedly left, pain due to a mark or witch's mark, which is believed to be a mark of the devil. So if you had a mole, a scar, they would take a pen and they would stick you with it. And if you went like, oh, you're guilty, that's stupid. The iron chair, which I saw one at the medieval torture in Los Angeles. It was a heated metal chair in which the accused was seated, sometimes with sharpened spikes or nails, which the one I saw did, to cause pain through burning or puncturing. So they slammed you in it. They tortured. The next one was the pillory and stocks. So they were devices used for public humiliation, physical punishment, securing the victim's head and hands and ankles. The next one was the thumb screw. That was a small screw device that applied painful pressure to the fingers or thumbs used to extract confessions. It was barbaric. I also saw this in Los Angeles. It's called the witch cabinet. You have to, if you go online, it was a torture chamber equipped with various spiked items, like really sharp spikes used to extract confessions. So they would put you in there and they would close it sometimes and you'd be squeezed with these spikes puncturing your body. And then there was the water torture. I'm going to leave that one in a moment. That's unbelievable. Wait till... Okay, let's go into the Salem witch trials. 24 innocent victims lost their lives at the Salem witch trial. And that was 24 too many. So how did this community, Salem, let this happen? Was it simply fear, superstition? Were there other factors at work? Well, the events took place in 1692 during a difficult, confusing time for Salem village. As part of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, Salem was under British rule. And when the hysteria began, the colony was waiting for a new governor. And they didn't have any charter to enforce laws. And by the time the new governor, William Phipps, arrived in Massachusetts, the jails were already filled with alleged witches. To make matters worse, the New England towns were under attack by Native Americans and French Canadians. So Salem village faced daily challenges closer to home as well. And so most families had to support themselves, make their own clothes, planting vegetables, raising meat. Farming was often a painstaking task in a harsh climate. And a drought or flood could ruin a year's harvest. An epidemic of smallpox could unalive an entire village. And so in a world where people saw the devil lurking behind every misfortune, it's a little wonder, why they believe that evil spirits were at work. But there may have been stronger factors behind this witch trial. The Puritan lifestyle. That was a strong belief of the devil in witchcraft. The divisions within Salem village, the expectations of the children, etc. All right. So the church was the cornerstone of the 17th century life in New England. Most people in Massachusetts were Puritans. They're colonists. So they left England seeking, religious tolerance. But the strict Puritan code was far from tolerant. And it was against the law not to attend church. And men and women sat on opposite sides through long services. So the Puritan lifestyle, it was restrained, it was rigid. People were expected to work hard and repress their emotions or opinions. Now, individuals' differences were frowned upon. Even the dark, somber Puritan dress was dictated by the church. And Puritans were expected to live by a rigid moral code. They believed that all sins, from sleeping in church to stealing food, should be punished. They also believed God would punish sinful behavior. So when a neighbor would suffer misfortune, such as like a sick child or a failed crop, well, Puritans saw it as God's will, and they didn't help. They also believed that the devil was as real as God. Everyone was faced with struggle between the powers of good and evil. So, Satan would select the weakest individuals, of course, women, children, insane, to carry out his work, they believed. And those who followed Satan were considered witches. Witchcraft was one of the greatest crimes a person could commit. So in keeping with the Puritan code of conformity, the first women to be accused of witchcraft in Salem were seen as different, social outcast. Tituba, a slave; Sarah Good, a homeless beggar; Sarah Osborne, a sickly old woman who married her servant. Fear of magic and witchcraft, it was very common in New England. It had been in Europe for centuries, and over 100 alleged witches had been tried and unalived in New England during the 1600s. But the hangings in 1692 Salem would be the last ones in America. So in 1692, Salem was divided into two distinct parts, Salem Town and Salem Village. Salem Village, also referred to as Salem Farms, was actually a part of Salem Town, but it was set apart by its economy, class, character. And residents of Salem Village were mostly poor farmers who made their living cultivating, crops in rocky terrain. Salem Town, on the other hand, well, that was a prosperous part of town, at the center of trade with London, and most those living in there, they were wealthy merchants. So for many years, Salem Village tried to gain independence from Salem Town. The town, which depended on the farmers for food, determined crop prices, collected taxes from the village. But despite the 3-hour walk between the two communities, Salem Village did not have its own church or minister until 1674. There was also a division within the Salem Village. Those who lived near Ipswich Road, close to the commerce of Salem Town, became merchants, blacksmiths, carpenters, innkeepers. They prospered and supported the economic changes. But many of the farmers who lived, far from this prosperity believed that the worldliness and affluence of Salem Town threatened their Puritan values. So one of the main families to denounce the economic changes was the Putnams, strong, influential force behind this witchcraft accusations. Tensions became worse when Salem Village selected Reverend Samuel Parris as their new minister. Parris was a stern Puritan who denounced the worldly ways of economic prosperity of Salem Town as the influence of the devil. His rhetoric further separated the two factions with Salem Village. It's likely that the jealousies and hostilities between the two factions, I think, played a major role in the witch trials. Most of the villagers accused of witchcraft lived Ipswich Road, whereas the accusers lived in the distant farms in Salem Village. So it's not surprising that Reverend Parris was a vigorous supporter of the witch trials. And his impassioned sermons helped fan the flames of the hysteria. So 1692, children were expected to behave under the very strict code as the adults. Chores, attending church services, repressing individual differences, any show of emotion, like excitement, fear, anger, that was discouraged. Disobedience was severely punished. Children rarely played, as toys and games were scarce. Puritans saw those activities as sinful distractions. But unlike young girls, boys had a few outlets for their imagination. They often worked as apprentices outside the home, carpentry, crafts. Boys were also allowed to explore the outdoors, hunting and fishing. On the other hand, girls were expected to tend to the house, helping their moms cook, wash, clean, sew. And many children learned to read, but most households owned only the Bible and other religious works, including a few that described evil spirits and witchcraft in great detail. Thank you. So there were a few books written for children, but these often warned against bad behaviors and punishment. Such was the world of Abigail Williams and Betty Parris during the long winter of 1692. And there was little to feed their imagination that did not warn of sin in eternal punishment. It's no wonder that the young girls were so captivated by Tituba's magical stories and fortune-telling games. So these activities were strictly forbidden, which must have filled them with fear and guilt. And this may have been one reason for the hysterical behavior. So at one time, the young girls were forbidden to act out or express themselves. It's easy to see why they were so enraptured by the attention they received when they became bewitched. Now, of course, there are probably many factors behind the girls' actions, thank you. But what is more surprising than the accusations from these imaginative young girls is the reaction from the community. The girls may have sparked the witch hunt, but it was the adults who set the wheels into motion. So the belief in witches and witchcraft was widespread in 1692 in New England. One of the most ardent believers was Cotton Mather, a respected Boston minister who wrote on many religious topics. And Mather's 1689 book, Memorable Providences, described a case of supposed witchcraft that had occurred in Boston the previous year. 3 children had begun acting strangely after a disagreement with an Irish washerwoman Mary Glover. And after examining the children, well, Mather concluded that they were innocent victims of Glover's witchcraft. And the book was widely read throughout all of New England. And by the way, it was also in Reverend Parris's library. So even if the young girls circled who began the accusations had not read the book themselves, they were likely familiar with it. But Mather played a much more direct role in the Salem trial. You see, his sermons and written works fanned the flames of the witchcraft hysteria. He declared that the devil was at work in Salem and that witches should face the harshest punishment. His steadfast belief in witchcraft was perhaps no more apparent than at the unaliving of George Burroughs, a former pastor of Salem Village. So just before he was unalived, Burroughs turned to the crowd and perfectly recited the Lord's Prayer. Supposedly impossible for someone who's a witch or a wizard. His dramatic prayer and claim of innocence drew tears and doubts from spectators. But Robert Califf describes Mather's reaction to his account, and he says, as soon as Burroughs was turned off unalive, Mr. Cotton Mather, being mounted upon a horse, addressed himself to the people, partly to declare that he was no ordained minister, and partly to possess the people of his guilt, saying that the devil has often been transformed into an angel of light. Anyway, when the witch hunt subsided, the judges agreed to turn over the courts to Mather. And some were friends of Mather's and hoped that his account would betray them favorably. So, 12-year-old Ann Putnam was in many ways the leader of the Circle Girls. Anne, that was her first name. The young girls whose accusations sparked the Salem witch trials. During the winter of 1692, the girls gathered secretly at Reverend Parris's house for evening and storytelling and magic with Parris's slave Tituba. One of the fortune-telling games was to drop an egg white into a glass of water to see what shape it took. One evening, Anne saw the shape of a coffin. Soon afterwards, Anne, Betty, Parris, and Abigail Williams started behaving strangely, babbling, convulsing, staring blankly. Well, Anne's next accusation surprised the village, and she claimed to have been tormented by the spirit of Martha Corey, a solid member of the church. And let's stop there briefly. For those of you just tuning in, I'm Bishop Long. We're having a fantastic conversation about the witch trials, all the historical witch trials. We're talking now about the Salem witch trials. For those of you just coming in, I want to remind you, please make sure you go to the website, kgradb.com. KGRAD as in dog, B as in bicycle.com. Click on the shop link and make sure you click on my name and purchase the products there. Again, proceeds goes to our friends, the MKS Kids Foundation. So these kids now claimed they've been tormented by the spirit of Martha Corey. She was a solid member of the church. Despite the lack of hard evidence, Martha was sent to prison and was eventually unalived. But Anne's, who led this bold accusation, had sparked the fear that any one of the villagers could be a witch. And Anne accused many more people in the coming months, including 4-year-old Dorcas Good, Anne's parents, Thomas and Anne, and also accused dozens of townspeople of witchcraft, most of whom were enemies of the influential Putnam family. Two of Anne's most shocking accusations against the pious Rebecca Nurse, former Salem pastor George Burroughs, may have been provoked by old family disputes. So, by the time the witch hunt was over, Anne had accused 62 people. In the coming years, she would have a difficult life. Both her parents passed away, leaving her to raise her 9 brothers and sisters on her own. She did something none of the other Circle Girls would do, publicly acknowledge her role in the trials. In 1706, she stood before the church as the pastor read her apology. And she says, this was her apology. I desire to be humbled before God for that sad and humbling providence that befell my father's family in the year 1692, that I, then being in my childhood, should by such a providence of God be made an instrument of the accusing of several persons of a grievous crime, whereby their lives were taken away from them, whom now I have just grounds and good reasons to believe they were innocent persons. and that it was a great delusion of Satan that deceived me in the sad time, whereby I justly fear that I have been instrumental with others, though ignorantly and unwittingly, to bring upon myself and this lamb the guilt of innocent blood. So, in Puritan Salem Village, a place where anyone different was not trusted, Tituba was perhaps the most different among them. Not only was she a slave, but she was unusual in the area. She was also a dark-skinned foreigner, setting her apart from the white Puritan villages. Tituba was born in a small village of South America, but as a child, she was captured and taken to the Caribbean islands, Barbados. And there she was sold as a slave to Samuel Paris, a local merchant originally from New England. In 1680, Paris, Tituba, and another West Indian slave named John Indian moved to Boston. And in Boston, Paris married, started a family, became a minister. All right. Well, Tituba and John married in 1689, the same year that Paris moved the family to Salem Village to become their pastor. So Paris' wife, Elizabeth, had many duties as the pastor's wife, was often sick. So Tituba tended her three children, Thomas, Betty, Susanna. In the evenings, Tituba entertained little Betty and her cousin Abigail Williams by the kitchen fire. She played fortune-telling games, told them stories of magic and spirits of the Caribbean. But such activities were strictly forbidden by the Puritan code. And word secretly spread among the neighborhood girls, and soon a small group of girls, known as the Circle Girls, were joining Tituba around the fire. And that cold winter of 1692, Betty, Abigail, and Ann Putnam began exhibiting strange behavior, babbling, twitching, convulsing. It was diagnosed as witchcraft. And Tituba and John baked a witch cake with rye and Betty's urine and fed it to the dog. It was believed the dog was a familiar, a witch's helper. And by eating the cake, the spell would be broken and the identities of the witches would be revealed. When pressed to identify their tormentors, the girls pointed to three social outcasts, including Tituba. Tituba denied practicing any witchcraft. She loved young Betty, but Reverend Paris, beat a slave, demanded that she confess to the magistrates, promising her freedom if she cooperated, and despite her 3-day examination and torture, Tituba did confess to practicing witchcraft and claimed that there were other witches in the village. Tituba was put in prison, but because she had confessed, she did not stand trial. Paris did not keep his promise and refused to pay the fees to release Tituba. She stayed in prison until the following spring, when she was sold and taken away from Salem. Nothing else is known about Tituba. But it is believed that she and John had one child, a daughter named Violet, who lived in the Paris household until the Reverend's passing of 1720. The examination of tribute, these are some of the transcripts. Listen to this. Judge, did you ever see the devil? Tituba, the devil came to me and bid me service, or bid me serve him. Judge, who have you seen? Tituba, 4 women sometimes hurt the children. Judge, who were they? Tituba, Goody Osborne, Sarah Good, and I do not know the others who the others were. Sarah Good and Osborne would have hurt me, the children, but I would not. Judge, when did you see them? Tituba says last night at Boston. Judge says, what do they say to you? Tituba says they said hurt the children. Judge says, and did you hurt them? She said no. There is 4 women and 1 man. They hurt the children, and they all lay upon me, and they tell me, if I will not hurt the children, they will hurt me. Judge asks, did you not hurt them? And Tituba says, yes, but I will hurt them no more. Judge says, are you not sorry that you did hurt them? And she says, yes. And why then did you hurt them? She says, because they say hurt children, or we will do worse to you. And Judge says, what have you seen? Tituba says, a man come to me and say, serve me. What service? The judge asked. Tituba says, hurt the children. And last night there was an appearance that said, unalive the children. And if I would know, I'd go on hurting the children. They would do worse to me. And judge says, what is this appearance you see? And she says, sometimes it's like a dog or a hog, or sometimes like a great dog. Judge says, what did it say to you? Tituba says, the black dog said, serve me. But I said, I'm afraid. And he said, if I did not, he would do worse to me. Sarah Good was one of the first to be accused of witchcraft by the circle of young girls in Salem. She was likely a witch in many of the townspeople's eyes. She was an odd homeless woman. She didn't fit the Puritan mold. The people of Salem were very familiar with Sarah Good. She often begged door to door with her children. And if she were refused, she would walk away mumbling. And many claim that these curses were responsible for failed crops or death of livestock. In 1692, Sarah Good faced examination with two other accused witches, Sarah Osborne and Tituba, and Reverend Paris's Caribbean slave, as I mentioned. And during the question, Ann Putnam, Betty Paris, and Abigail Williams shrieked and fell into fits. Sarah Good pleaded, I am falsely accused. But then Tituba named her as a witch. Several villagers, including her own husband, also testified against her, and Sarah was put in prison. On March 24th, Ann Putnam accused Sarah's 5-year-old daughter, Dorcas, of witchcraft. And when examined, the imaginative young child confessed that she and her mother were witches. And she showed the magistrates a red spot on her finger, most likely a flea bite, claiming it was from a snake her mother had given her. And little Dorcas was put in prison, chained to a wall. Sarah Good was tried on June 30, despite no evidence other than the claims of the afflicted girls, and she was found guilty. She is one of 5 women to be unalived. In July 19, 1692, just before the hanging, the other women prayed and asked God to forgive the accusers, but Sarah Good showed no sign of forgiveness. And local minister Reverend Nicholas Noyes urged her to confess, announcing that she was indeed a witch. And Sarah Good replied, I am no more a witch than you are a wizard. And if you take away my life, God will give you blood to drink. 25 years later, Reverend Noyes died of internal bleeding, choking on his own blood. Not everyone in Salem supported the witch trials. Wealthy farmer John Proctor sternly denounced the proceedings and warned against listening to the young girls. And when his maidservant, Mary Warren, began to have fits, he sat her down at the sewing wheel and threatened to beat her if she didn't stop. But as the hysteria grew, Mary's fits returned. And after the examination of Rebecca Nurse, the pious grandmother accused of witchcraft, Proctor was enraged, saying, if they, the afflicted girls, were let alone, so we should all be devils and witches. Such comments were eventually used against them. And the townspeople believed that someone with so little concern for the afflicted girls must be guilty. But Proctor's wife, Elizabeth, was accused first. And as John staunchly defended her innocence at the trials, the girls suddenly pointed her fingers at them, the man, to be named the wizard. And Mary Warren confirmed the accusations against them. The only evidence against them was spectral. The afflicted girls claimed that Proctor's apparitions or specters were tormenting them. Their hysterics proved enough for the court, and both John and Elizabeth were imprisoned. And Proctor wrote an impassionate letter to the Boston clergy claiming, we are all innocent persons. He described the unfairness of the court proceedings and how torture was used to extract confessions. What's interesting, well, on August 5th, both John and Elizabeth were found guilty. Elizabeth's life would be spared because she was pregnant, but John was unalived on August 19, 1692. And then, of course, Mary Esty, a wife and a mother of 7, was well respected in Salem. She was kind, religious woman, dignified demeanor, fit the strict Puritan mold. But she was not safe from the hysteria. She was accused of witchcraft in 1692. The accusations shook the village. Unlike some of the other alleged witches, she was not a social outcast, outspoken woman. Perhaps the accusations was inspired by envy. See, the Estes owned a valuable farm in Salem. Or maybe Mary was a likely target after the conviction of her sister, Rebecca Nurse. Mary was calm, respectful during her examination, but the afflicted girls' cries, they were insistent, and she was sent to prison. She was eventually set free a few days later, but Mercy Lewis cried out that Etsy's apparition was strangling her. Her fit was so severe that Mary was put back into jail. And on September 9th, Mary Etsy was tried and condemned. Despite her saying, I never complied, but prayed against Satan all my days, and I will say it. If it was my last time, I am clear of this sin. But before her execution, she wrote a letter to the judges asking that no more innocent blood be shed. And Etsy and 7 others were carted to the Gallows Hills on September the 22nd. Ridiculous. Now, for those of you who are wondering, what are the trials? Would you have been found guilty? Listen to this from the History Channel. This is insane. First, they would give you this swimming test. So as part of the infamous swimming test, accused witches were dragged to the nearest body of water, stripped to their undergarments, bound, and then tossed in to see if they would sink or float. Since witches were believed to have been spurned or have spurned the sacrament of baptism, it was thought that the water would reject their bodies and prevent them from submerging. So according to this logic, an innocent person would sink like a stone, pass away. But a witch would simply bob up and down on the surface. Well, the victim typically had a rope tied around their waist so they could be pulled, from the water if they sank. But it wasn't unusual for an accidental drowning death to occur. So witch swimming derived from the trial by water, an ancient practice where suspected criminals and sorcerers were thrown into rushing rivers to allow a higher power to decide their fate. By the way, it was banned by most European countries in the Middle Ages, only to reemerge in the 17th century as a witch experiment. So if in fact you sank to the bottom, well, you're innocent, but by the time they pulled you up, you probably already drowned. But if you bobbed, you're guilty. Another one, the prayer test. You see, medieval wisdom held that witches were incapable of speaking scripture aloud. So accused sorcerers were made to recite selections from the Bible, usually the Lord's Prayer, without making any mistakes or omissions. And while it may have been simply a sign that, the suspected witch was illiterate or nervous, any errors were viewed as proof that the speaker was in league with the devil. So this twisted test of public speaking in front of everyone, it was commonly used as hard evidence in witch trials. In 1712, it was actually applied in the case of Jane Wynnum, an accused witch who supposedly struggled to speak the words, "Forgive us our trespasses, and lead us not into temptation," during her interrogation. But still, even a successful prayer, that didn't guarantee an acquittal. As a matter of fact, during the Salem witch trials, the accused sorcerer, George Burroughs, flawlessly recited the prayer. But the person said, no, it's a devil's trick. That didn't save him. The next one was called the touch test. So the touch test worked on the idea that the victims of sorcery would have a special reaction to physical contact with their evildoer. In cases where a possessed person fell into spells or fits, so here's what would happen. The suspected witch would be brought into the room and asked to lay a hand on the accuser. Just to put your hand on the shoulders. A non-reaction signaled innocence. But if the victim came out and on their fit, that was a sign of proof that the suspect had placed them under spell. How ridiculous is this? The touch test actually played a famous part in the 1662 trial of Rose Cullender and Amy Denny, 2 elderly English women charged with bewitching a pair of young girls. The children had been suffering from fits that left their fist clenched so tightly that even a strong man could not pry their fingers apart. But early tests showed they easily opened whenever Cullender or Denny touched them. So to ensure their reaction was genuine, judges had the children blindfolded and touched by other members of the court. The girls unclenched their fist anyway, which suggested they were faking. But even this was not enough to prove the women's innocence. Cullender and Denny were both later hanged as witches. I mentioned this earlier, the witch's cake. This is crazy. It's a bizarre form of counter magic. So the witch cake, it was a supernatural dessert used to identify suspected evildoers. In cases of mysterious illnesses or possession, witch hunters would take a sample of the victim's urine, mix it with rye meal and ashes, and bake it into a cake. The stomach-turning concoction was then fed to a dog, the familiars, animal helpers of witches, in the hope that the beast would fall under its spell and reveal the name of the guilty sorcerer. Well, anyway, during the hysteria that preceded the Salem witch trials, the slave Tituba famously helped prepare a witch cake to identify the person responsible for bewitching young Betty Paris and others. Well, the brew failed to work, and Tituba's supposed knowledge of spells and folk remedies was later used as evidence against her when she was accused of being a witch. The next one, the witch's mark. I think most of us would be in trouble. So witch hunters often had their suspects stripped, publicly examined for signs of unsightly blemish that witches were said to receive upon making their pact with Satan. The devil's mark could supposedly change shape and color, was believed to be numb, insensitive to pain. So prosecutors might also search for the witch's teat, is what they call it. It's an extra nipple allegedly used to suckle the witch's helper animal. Anyway, in both cases, it was easy for even the most minor physical imperfection to be labeled as the work of the devil himself. Moles, scars, birthmarks, sores, tattoos, all could qualify. So examiners rarely came up empty-handed. In the midst of witch hunts, desperate villagers would sometimes even burn or cut off any offending marks on their bodies, only to have their wounds labeled as proof of a covenant with the devil. Imagine burning a mole or something, burning it off of your body. That's painful enough. But because now there's some type of mark that leaves, well, that's a witch. The next one was called pricking and scratching test. So if witch hunters struggled to find obvious evidence of witch's marks on a suspect's body, well, they might resort to the ghastly practice of pricking as means of, taking it out. So in other words, witch hunting books and instructional pamphlets noted that the marks were insensitive to pain, couldn't bleed. So examiners use specially designed needles to repeatedly stab and prick at the accused person's flesh until they discovered a spot that produced the desired results. In England and Scotland, the torture was eventually performed by well-paid professionals called prickers, many of whom were actually con men who used dull needle points to identify fake witches' marks. That's terrifying. So it'd be dull. And there's no pain. It's proofs. And along with pricking, the unfortunate suspect might also be subjected to scratching by their supposed victim. So the test was based on the notion that possessed people found relief by scratching the person responsible with their fingernails until they drew blood. If their symptoms improved after clawing at the accused skin, it was seen as evidence of guilt. I hope everyone understood what I said there. So if someone accused you of witchcraft, then the accuser would have the right with their nails to claw at your body, to claw until blood and even more, they would just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going until finally the accuser had enough. And if they drew blood, you're guilty. And then finally, you have incantations. So also known as charging. So the test involved forcing the accused witch to verbally order the devil to let the possessed victim come out of their fit or trance. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm going to say this again. This was known as charging. The test involved forcing the accused witch to verbally order the devil to let the possessed victim come out of their fit or trance. Other people would also utter the words to act as a control. Judges would then gauge whether the statements had any effect on the victim's condition. So in other words, if you accuse someone of witchcraft and you were having a fit and you were wailing all down, and you were falling all over the ground and screaming, and the person that you accused of witchcraft then would be forced to do a charging or an incantation. They would be forced to say to the devil, come out of that person. And if the person stopped wailing around, you were guilty. You knew what was going to happen. No matter what you did, you were going to be found guilty. Because the person who accused you is going to make sure that they stop acting stupid so that everyone believes them, and you are guilty. Matter of fact, charges were famous. This was actually used in the 16th century witch trial of Alice Samuel and her husband and daughter. They were accused of bewitching 5 girls from the wealthy Throckmorton family. And during the proceedings, judges forced the Samuels to demand that the devil release the girls from their spell by stating, as I am a witch, so I charge the devil to let Mistress Throckmorton come out of her fit at this present. And when the possessed girls immediately recovered, the Samuels were found guilty, and they were hanged as witches. My friends, the reason I think this is so important, not only, of course, obviously, we know about the Salem witch trials in October, but I think it's important to do these presentations to remind you of the dangers that come with extremist views, especially extremist views when it comes to religion. It is incredibly frightening to know that this actually happened and that people lost their lives simply because, one, they didn't have any power, no control, and they were so falsely accused by people for no variety of reasons. And innocent people, including children, lost their lives because of religious fanaticism. We can never, ever go back to a culture of religious fanaticism. Because the moment we do, then we open the door for things like this to occur. What's frightening, what's really frightening, is that everything that I said to you today is based on true events, true historical events. And that to me is more alarming than anything. Okay, so that is your presentation on the historical witch trials. We will, I guess I'll open the chat open. We'll see. If people are going to be rude, I'm going to put chat back on to sub chat. So it's very simple. Very simple. So if you have any questions, well, hello there, Jamie. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to jump in and ask them. Well, thank you. Oh, you better be careful. I might be accused of witchcraft, having a witch hat. All right. Oh, yeah, they burned them alive. Well, when the accusations stopped, well, they were absolutely convinced that it was because of, the witch. It worked. That the evildoers were unalived, and when things finally started settling down, there were some absolutely were convinced that because they rid the world of these horrible people, we did the righteous thing. But the fact of the matter is Anne, one of the girls in the Salem witch trials, who was one of the leading accusers, she really dealt she had later in life, she repented and she had deep regret over what she did because she was responsible for many people losing their lives. Oh yeah, okay. Speaking of which, I want to show her. I think this was from. I don't know. Was this? I got this in the mail today. As most of you know, I like to eat on Mentos. Mentos. It's the I forgot the name. That I don't know the flavor. The fruity flavor. Yeah, the fruit. Yeah. So anyway, someone sent this to me today. I thought that was very interesting. Like, okay, there we go. The Mentos. So got a big old Mentos. I didn't even know they had a Mentos animal or snackles. So anyway, unfortunately, there was no picture or note on it. So I don't know. Don't know 100% who sent that. But nonetheless, yeah, a little mascot there. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's probably what because I always have Mentos. I like the Mentos, the fruity kind. Okay. I have a fan, yeah. So anyway, if you're the one who sent it, let me know because there was no note there. What was the event that started really, as I talked about, even in the we see early 16th century, well, 17th century, in the early 1600s. Not yet. It was religious fanaticism is what started it. And what really started it was calamities. So you have religious fanaticism here on one spectrum of it in the culture, and then you start having calamities that start. Yeah, hysteria started. So there was calamity. So animals were dying, and crops were failing, and people were getting sick, probably because they were malnourished and other issues. And so people, because of the fanaticism, well, that's interesting. Because of the fanaticism, they started saying, well, that it has to be, witchcraft. And of course, King James certainly didn't help. But it was insanity. You had this extremist view, this fanaticism, and then you have calamities occurring and people saying it has to be the devil. It has to be the devil. And that brought the community together in their despair because they were struggling and having issues, and they immediately started saying, what's the devil? It's the witches. And then that's how it started. So, okay. I think the victims were, 99%, if not 100% of them were innocent. Should have never happened. Never. And the fact that it did is barbaric. By the way, let me read this story to you guys very, very, very quickly. This is real interesting. A little too late now. I saw this. I've got to tell you. Hold on one second. Where is it? Hold on one second. If I can find it. Oh, here it is. Like, boy, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And this is by T.K. Randall. I saw this. I've got to tell you guys. Listen. T.K. Randall writes this. Centuries ago, the crimes of being practicing witch based on flimsiest of evidence was punishable by death. It's been 373 years since 7 women, Anne Ashby, Mary Brown, Anne Martin, Mildred Wright, Susan Bickerton, Anne Wilson, and Mary Reed were unalive for the crimes of bewitching 3 children and bargaining with the devil for exchange of demonic powers. They were hanged on July 30th, 1652 in Pennington Heath in Kent. This is in England. Now, nearly 4 centuries later, there's a growing movement of people hoping that these women, along with many others in the country who were also trialed as witches, formally pardoned. You're 373 years too late. Anyway, these historic acts of unaliving cannot be undone, but those women can be granted a general pardon, said Maidstone Borough Council leader Stuart Jeffrey. Not everyone, however, agrees with the motion, instead arguing that it was a waste of taxpayers' funds. Quote, for some people, it's completely pointless and achieves nothing, said local councillor Claire Kahili. Yes, these women we will never know, though maybe they'll rest a little bit more peacefully, but I think it sends a strong message that injustice will be called out and fought against. But at the end of the day, they weren't witches, they were just women. Sadly, the case of these 7 women is certainly not a one-off, and the same thing happened to countless other witches across Britain who had their lives cut short in a similar manner. Suspicion of witchcraft could arise from anything. Even diseases could be blamed on witches. So nonetheless, now 373 years later, these women are going to get their reprieve. Woo, yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Paula. Paula says mediumship came under witchcraft. It's even still today. Even still today, people who are psychic mediums, well, you are accused of being witches, you're accused of doing the work of the devil, and blah, blah, blah. Let me make this very clear. And I really don't give a rat's behind who likes this or not. I don't care. I know for a fact that there are people that are gifted. Whether you like it or not, you can go ahead and run your mouth just like all the extremists that you want. But I'm going to tell you something. I'll tell you the story, and I'll answer the question in just a second. Hold on. Let me make this very clear to you. And this is why I know that there are people that are gifted. Number one, I know Willie Wynn Walker Gibson. Starla is our friend. She's gifted. I know Chip Coffey. He's a friend of mine. He's gifted. And let me just say this also. I was a chaplain for a major metropolitan police department. And I was one of those people at one time that thought, I don't know about these psychic mediums. Because I was brought up in a, I'd say relatively strict, I guess a conservative family. Until I was there, I saw it. And for all those hater-gators out there, you don't know what you're saying. There was a missing person, and a medium, psychic medium, contacted the police and gave them information on where they could find the remains of the person. The psychic medium didn't unalive them, and so they asked me. They wanted clergy there so that the family wouldn't run on the scene. They didn't want any evidence, messed up. So I was there with the family. This family was very anti-psychic medium. They didn't believe in them. They thought they were the work of the devil, but they went there to see, in fact, if it was there. I was there. I saw it. They found the remains of the missing person within 5 feet of where this psychic medium said that they would find the remains. I was there. I saw it. Now, immediately, the naysayers are going to say, well, it was doing the work of the devil. Okay, the devil doesn't give you peace of mind. The devil takes your peace of mind. So if you know anything about demonology, you wouldn't say something that silly. Now, the family, by the way, and I kind of, that really made me think, well, that's kind of selfish. But the family that was there, that hated psychic mediums, that thought that they were all doing the work of the devil, all of a sudden their perspective changed when they were able to receive the benefits of a person who is a medium and gave them the location of the remains of their loved ones. Then they start wondering, well, maybe we don't have all the answers. So it basically took you to benefit something in order for you to recognize that there are people that are gifted. Now, see, I will tell you this. There are many clergy, and I speak to them behind the scenes. They've told me, I believe in psychic mediums. Absolutely, I believe that there are people that are gifted. In public, they'll never tell you. They'll never say that. But that's fine. That's their choice. But I am not going to apologize. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to try to make you comfortable, because I am telling you now, I believe there are people that are gifted. I also believe there are many people who claim to be psychic mediums who are as psychic as the stray dog outside. So let's make that clear too. I think there's a lot of people who are able to do cold readings because they can pick up on cues. They're very, very good on picking up on cues. but I know people who are truly gifted. So I'm not familiar with that, no. Oh, Choots. Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you for letting me know that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Choots. Okay. Hello there. So anyway, I just think that it's sad that it took them benefiting something before they were willing to be a little open-minded and perhaps maybe question the fact that, could this be real? Same thing with paranormal investigators. I get so sick and tired when I hear these people, when people run their mouths and say, oh, the paranormal investigators are doing the work of Satan. I always tell people, just shut up. Don't talk to me anymore. If you're going to say that, you're a hypocrite. And I'll tell you why I say that to these people. They're always thinking, paranormal investigators, they're doing the work of the devil. They're doing the work of the devil. I don't see you answering the calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. When a family contacts you and says, I need you to please get here because I'm terrified. So Bishop Long calls you and says, look, I can't get to California. You're a team out there. Can you get your team out there? Go buy, spend thousands of dollars on the equipment that you have to buy, which they do, and then leave, go to this location in which, by the way, they don't owe these people anything. They go to these people's family. They spend hours and hours in this location. They investigate, possibly putting themselves in danger. Then they got to go home, review all the evidence, send me the evidence, and then I have to determine if I have to get to that family. If that's not ministry, I don't know what is. But it's always the people who it's these little yappy people. They're never the ones that answers the calls at night. Never. They're not answering these phone calls at night. They're not going to these people's homes and helping them. They're just doing this. They're doing this. And while the people who are really doing ministry are actually doing the work. So paranormal investigators that I work with, these are individuals who truly love to help others. And to me, they are absolutely doing beautiful ministry. And I truly am greatly appreciative of them. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I grew up in the house that I grew up in was definitely haunted. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was definitely haunted. So I'm going to remind everybody that tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, a poor paranormal. I always tell people, oh, you have an opinion on how I should live my life. Which bill of mine are you going to pay this month? Thank you there, Tammy. It's interesting. They never pay a bill, but they also give me, they'll give me their criticism for free. But anyway, so I want to remind you tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have night prayer. I would love for you to join us. That would be great. Children ghost. I'm going to tell you something. And this is just from my experience. In every single case that I have worked where there were children ghost, it was demonic. However, one time I had a situation where I saw a full body apparition of a boy that I think he was wearing maybe 1890s clothing. I did not feel demonic. That was after we left the gates of Hell Cemetery. That I still have to process. But anyway, TikTok, stay with me. I'm going to stay with you guys for a little bit longer. We're tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be having our night prayer. Please join us Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm on TikTok only. I have Mass on TikTok, 6 p.m. Eastern. And then 8 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, we have Bible study. My friends, I tell you all the time, your value does not decrease based on a troll's inability or refusal to see your worth. You are priceless. And don't listen to these trolls. Remember, friends, never accept criticism from someone that you would not go to for advice. Until next week, God bless.